Hello everyone, Amy here from Plastic Clever Schools. I have some exciting news for you. It is British Science Week 2026. From the 6th to the 15th of March, thousands of schools and scientists across the country are coming together for a 10-day celebration of science, technology, engineering and maths. It's organised by the British Science Association to show us that science is more than just a subject that we do in school. It's an incredibly important part of how we understand everything that's happening in our world. Now, the theme for 2026 is curiosity, and curiosity is really important for science because it encourages us to look at the world around us and to ask questions. So, today, I want to channel our curiosity towards looking at a material that is everywhere in our lives, and that is plastic. It's one of the most successful inventions in human history, but in recent years we've started to realise that maybe it's not quite as amazing as we once thought. In fact, solving it is actually a big scientific puzzle that we need to figure out, and soon. But before we can think about how to solve this problem, we first need to understand it. So today we're going to have a look at the life story of plastic and the different problems it causes throughout its life cycle and where the possible solutions to fix it could lie and how you guys could help. Now let's start by looking at the chemistry. Plastic is what we call a synthetic polymer. This means it's made of long, strong chains of carbon and hydrogen molecules linked tightly together, although different molecules can be substituted in to create different types of plastic. The length of these chains make them really strong and means that they don't decompose in water. Almost all plastic actually starts as crude oil, which is a fossil fuel that's buried deep underground. And extracting and refining this oil releases huge amounts of carbon dioxide, which contributes to climate change. And in fact, by the year 2050, making plastic could be using up to 20% of all the oil in the entire world. So, plastic has a massive carbon footprint before it's even been used once. This means it's releasing carbon dioxide that's contributing to climate change from the very start. Then, when we use plastic, scientists are also curious about how plastic might be affecting our health. Now, have you ever noticed that if you leave a plastic bottle of water in a hot car and you come back and have a drink, you may have noticed that the water can taste a little bit weird? And that's because the heat of the car actually causes chemicals in the plastic to leach or leak into the liquid, which is a little bit disgusting. And scientists have been investigating chemicals like BPA, which were used in plastic for a really long time. And they discovered that some of these chemicals can actually interfere with our bodies, and in particular, our hormones, which are really important chemical substances that act like messenger molecules within our bodies. Now, because of this scientific discovery, many countries have now restricted use of chemicals like BPA in things like baby bottles. But what happens when we're finished with a plastic item? Well, there are three main ways that we can try to get rid of plastic. First, there is landfill. Now, because plastic is so durable, it sits in big piles of rubbish for hundreds of years. And when it rains, the water hits the plastic and causes those chemicals in the plastic to actually leach into the ground, where they can flow into our rivers and the oceans. Because plastic is so light, it can also blow away from these sites and become litter in the environment, which you might have seen yourself. Secondly, there is incineration, which is basically a fancy word for burning. And burning plastic can release energy, but scientists have found that it also releases massive amounts of carbon dioxide and other gases into our atmosphere. And finally, there is recycling. Now, we often think of recycling as the perfect solution with our waste, but most plastic that's put in the recycling bin is actually downcycled. And downcycling means that it's turned into something of lower material quality than it was before. So often, this means that it eventually ends up as waste anyway. Over half of the plastic that we make is single use, which is often too flimsy or too low grade to even be recycled at all. So you may be thinking, well, Surely a simple solution is that we just don't use plastic at all, and we can use other materials like glass or bioplastic that you might have heard of. Well, science shows us that this isn't always that simple. Firstly, glass is actually much heavier than plastic, so it takes way more fuel and releases more CO2 into the atmosphere just to move it around in things like lorries. Bioplastics made from plants sound pretty great, but many can only be broken down in giant industrial composting machines, not in our own garden composter or when it gets into the environment or the ocean. So, really, there's not a magic wand material that we can use. The real scientific solution to tackling plastic pollution and plastic waste is reduction. This is finding ways to stop using single use plastic in the first place. And this is exactly why the world needs scientists. We need brilliant, curious minds to help solve these global problems. We need to find closed loop systems where nothing is wasted, where we use items again and again and can keep using the material for lots of different purposes. We need amazing scientists to invent new materials that don't harm our planet while still meeting everyone's needs. But being a scientist and making an impact on this problem doesn't have to wait until you're in university or you have a grown up science job. It can actually start right now, this British Science Week. You can start your scientific mission right here at school with the Plastic Clever Schools programme, and by gathering data on your school's waste and finding clever ways to reduce it, you're already taking real scientific action. Every time you ask why something's made of plastic or how a material could be reused, you are thinking like a scientist. Now, if you do want to dive even deeper into this topic, your teachers have access to our special Plastic Clever Science lesson, where you can run your own experiments and even build your own curiosity wall of questions. So we know the story of plastic, but the story of our planet is in your hands. So put on your scientific hats, look closely at everything around you, and never stop being curious. Happy British Science Week, everyone!